In the Thailand's Trade Competition Act in 2017, the unfair trade practices were written in Section 57, which says that any practice that are unfairly restricting. So the first thing is a restriction. We're going to dig deeper into detail afterwards. What are these restrictions? And or you exercise, like a business entity exercise market power or bargaining power. This bargaining power is particularly unique if you look at most European countries' laws on these unfair trade practices or unfair methods of competition. You will not find this bargaining power, because this is not just from the market point of view that you are having this market power, but it could be just between trading partners. Even if none of these trading partners has substantial market power, but it could be the case that for a particular trade between partners, one partner has this bargaining power, substantial bargaining power against its own trading partner, and by having that bargaining power, it could exercise these unfair trade practices as well. And this emphasizes the objective that we discussed earlier, that in this case probably this is not a protection for consumers in the market, because consumers still have any other players within the market, but this is an attempt to protect that particular inferior player to not be mistreated by the one who has a greater bargaining power. And the last thing is when you unfairly fix business conditions, we're going to see some example of how these conditions can be fixed unfairly among trading partners or among players or business entities within the market. So now I think because we did this abuse of dominance earlier, and you have learned a bit about this unfair trade practices already. So I think you get a gist of the difference between these two practices. The abuse of dominance has to be done by a dominant business entity, a business operator only. And from our definitions, you can be dominant only if you have a certain market share in the market. So pretty much you are a large player who are dominating the market, and you abuse your dominant position by conducting some practices, right? And the purpose of this abuse of dominance is to protect consumers. On the other hand, when we consider these unfair trade practices, it could be any firm. But it is true that it's just not every single firm, but it could be any firm in the sense that even though you don't have any market power at all, but you have this substantial bargaining power against your competitors, then you could probably some of your practices, if they are done unfairly or unreasonably, they could be considered as the unfair trade practices, and might fall under the Article 57 of the Trade Competition Act. And importantly, the objective of these unfair trade practices is quite different from the abuse of dominance, in the sense that it aims at protecting other firms, especially smaller firms or the inferior firms who could be mistreated by the superior firms, both in terms of having, well, slightly more market power, or when that particular firm has a bargaining power